Hello and welcome to this podcast, Little Girls Aren't Taught This. I am your host, Self-Love Lydia, and this is a self-love podcast unlike no other. Within this podcast, we will go into all of the things that we should have been taught as little girls that would have helped us feel empowered, connected, and just unapologetic as we grew into women. I am the queen of deep transformations. I am on a mission to impact women around the world with self-love, and I am here to teach you how to be unapologetic and just step into your power. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Hello you guys, and welcome to this week's podcast episode. I don't know why I just sounded like that, but how are you all feeling today? I hope you are doing well, and I hope that wherever you are listening to this, that your day is going good and you are doing things that are making you feel happy, and that also you have connected to self-love in some way, or you intend to, because that is always my wish for you when you listen to this podcast. So I am coming on today to talk about periods, menstrual cycles, and my experience of those things. This is going to be something that I bring a guest in to talk about as well, but I really wanted to just do a solo episode before I do that, because there's a lot of stuff that I feel I have to say on this subject, and a lot of lived experiences that I'd love to share with you guys. And when I bring a guest on, I really want to be able to give them the space and that episode to be about their knowledge of this stuff. So that's why I'm doing the solo episode. And one of the other things that prompted me to do this episode was last week I put on my Instagram story about my PMS symptoms. And I was speaking openly about how I was feeling super down, and that I felt disconnected from life, and I felt disconnected from myself, and I was really struggling with anxiety, specifically when it's coming towards my period. I really struggle with that. And so many women resonated with that post. It was shared so many times. So many women reached out to me and were like, oh my God, I've never even connected the link between when I'm due on my period and how my mental health declines. So in that post I said, every so often I get really strong bouts of pre-bleed anxiety. It feels so uncomfortable because it feels so negative to be in this space. I feel very emotional, very down, very anxious, super introverted. I lose my spark for a few days and I really struggle. But I find peace with it because I understand it's not me, it's something I cannot control. Which, to be fair, for a long time, I did not know that. And what's really sad is when I'm having these conversations with my friends, we are all saying, wow, there's women out there that think at certain times of the month, they are going, to use that word that we use so often, crazy. They think that they are really down, they feel really disconnected, they feel really anxious, and they don't know what it is. And then automatically, having these conversations with women, we realise that we blame ourselves for that, and other people will pick up on that, and then we obviously absorb what people are saying to us, and we begin to have these thoughts around how we're being with other people. And it's so heartbreaking that we are not taught about this stuff. And then I put, thank God I know this, because it would be so hard to navigate this and understand what's happening if I didn't understand my cycle. I only recently started to track my cycle, the last 2 years, and I only really started to understand how my body and my mindset and my energy is truly impacted in different phases of my cycle. And that is essentially what I want to go into in the episode today. So for 10 years, I was on false hormones. And the reason why I felt called sharing that is because when I'm talking to my friends, we talk about how that anxiety is there, and that heaviness and that darkness is there, and the thoughts just go absolutely out of control. But we don't talk about it, because the most common spoken about symptom of period is bloating and cramps. And you know why I feel that is because it's to do with the body image again, isn't it? And that's why it's the most spoken about thing, because we physically see the changes in our bodies, we see the bloating. And I know for me, when I was in that space where I was constantly obsessed about my body, if I was bloated due on my period, I would make a point of dropping it into conversation with people of, oh my God, I'm due on my period. Like, no one asked. No one was even talking about periods, but I would make sure that I would get it in. So everyone would know, don't judge my body, like I'm due on my period, but in like a really fucking negative way. Like, please don't judge me for how my stomach's looking today. And it's just ridiculous. It's just really ridiculous. So I also said in that post that understanding your cycle, sorry, I have a coffee here. I really was craving one. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to have one while doing the podcast episode. So if you hear me take a little pause, that's why. I also said that understanding your cycle as a woman is a form of self-love and deep empowerment of your womanhood. Absolutely, I'm such a strong believer of this. It's giving yourself permission 10 times over, because no one ever gives us permission. No one fucking educated us. No one cared enough to explain the hormonal changes we face. So honouring our needs when you need to, and like having compassion for your wonderful body doing what she's designed to, is such an empowering and liberating thing to do. Because instead of it being negative, or instead of us just associating so much negativity to our period, what we're actually doing is using it as a form of empowerment, and we can use it as a driving force of gratitude that our body is doing the thing that she is designed to do, and we have to honour her, because that happens without our control. You know, that's as simple as A and B. So we have no control over the fact that our body has a period, so we should fucking honour that, not reject that, not try and push through, not try and pretend that we're not exhausted, or just not meet our needs. Like, it's not good enough to not be doing that. But the reason we don't do that is because we are not taught about our periods, and that is something that really angers me, that we are not taught about our periods, that when we have periods as little girls, they are not honoured within our families. And this is nobody's fault, because this is just a generational thing. But, you know, understanding that and really, really feeling the impact of that now makes me just want to honour, if I have a little daughter, honour her cycle so much. Like, the first time she bleeds, do her like a little bleed box that's full of like different types of like pads and pajamas and hot water bottles, and maybe some like chocolate, whatever it is that she feels like she needs. That will be like a gift for her little like first little bleed. So I, you know, even thinking about that and saying that out loud, I did digress a little bit with that, but it really makes me feel happy to know that I can break the cycle. And it also makes me a little bit sad that nobody done that for me, because periods are such powerful, powerful things, and we are so disconnected from them, and we are not taught about them. So this is what I want to go into in today's podcast episode. So just a little bit of background on periods for me. I started when I was like super early, so it was probably like year 6, and I think within a few years I was put on contraception, but it wasn't for obviously that reason. You know, you used to go to the doctors, didn't you, when you were bleeding and you were in school, and it was embarrassing if you'd started before everybody else, and there's just so much shame around periods. It's just ridiculous. Like, thinking back, there's just so much shame around if we bleed in front of people, if we bleed through, if anybody knows. Even like, I remember taking tampons out my bag, or like getting a tampon off a friend, and I'd literally hide it up my sleeve because it was just like so embarrassing. Like, what the fuck? What even is that? Why are we so embarrassed? And these environments that we were in and remain in, I mean, they're getting better now. Like, my university and stuff has tampons and like drawers situated in the main toilet part. Like, it's not just in the women's. If there's like just random cubicles, it'll just have like a big station where you can get like tampons and pads for free. So it's like really amazing. And I know a lot of places are a lot more open to it now. But just thinking back to like my experience, there was so much shame around that. So for me, my period was never really, I was kind of neutral about it, you know, it wasn't a positive, it was a negative when I was like bleeding and feeling like crap, but I didn't understand it enough to really understand what was happening in my body. So I never gave it time or attention. It was just like one morning I'd wake up and I'd be like, oh, I'm bleeding, okay, tampons, pads, all of those things. And even that in itself is just bizarre that we're not taught about cycles and the things that happen to us, especially when we're teenage girls, because on top of going through all of our hormones changing, our periods and our cycles have such a huge impact on that. And then when you start looking at PMS and, you know, that feeling of anxiety and depression and just absolutely out of control thought processes and even how we feel in our bodies, it's huge. You know, it's like, it's so important for our mental health and our body image. And it's just, it blows my mind that we're not taught about these things. So I was on contraception for 10 years. And one of the things that I also think is really interesting upon reflection of this is every time I would go to the doctors every 6 months or so to get my to get my repeat prescription of the pill, I was always on the one where you had a period, because the thought of not having a period freaked me out a little bit. But I remember having friends who didn't have a period for about 6 years. And I specifically remember one friend, and I said to her when I was about 17, she was like, I have not really had a period for about 10 years. And I remember being gobsmacked, and I thought, how can you not have a period? And she said, oh yeah, you can get a pill where they just completely stop your periods. And that just sat like so uncomfortable with me and just made me, I was so confused by that. I was like, that makes no sense. Like, I don't get it. But isn't it interesting? I don't know for anybody else, but every time I'd go and get my repeat prescription, instead of asking me about my periods or ever educating me on my periods or actually asking me how the pill was impacting me mentally, what they would do is really focus on how many sexual partners that I had, how often I was sleeping with people, and all kinds of other questions about my sex life, which now thinking back just feels really inappropriate. Like, I get it's a contraception, so I get why they ask those questions, but on my record, if I've been on that since I was like 13 because of my periods, that was the initial reason I came to it, then why was there no education or questioning around that? I don't know, that was just a thought that I had when I was thinking about my experience of my period. So I actually came off the contraception, but only because I'd hit the 10-year mark when I was about 24 or 25, I can't remember. And instantly I noticed there was a change. So my skin broke out. So even now when I look back at stories from the 2019, the end of 2018, I was going back onto the pill because I'd just met Luke, so I was going back onto the pill. And isn't this funny? In my mind, I didn't think, oh, use a condom, or, you know, what are the other options that we can get. Instantly it was like, okay, I just need to put this hormone back in my body now because it's my responsibility to do that when I meet a partner. All of these things are so linked. It's crazy. So I come off it probably like the middle of 2018. I literally had like a 6-month break, and I remember going back to my doctors and she was like, you can go back on the pill, like you've had a little break so you can now go back on it. And I was like, oh, I mean, that doesn't make sense, but okay, whatever. I thought it was dangerous, or if I've had like a few months off it, okay. So I went back on it and my skin broke out, my mood deteriorated. Because I'd been on the pill for so long, I never truly understood the impact the false hormone was having on me. So when I stopped and put it back into my body, oh my God, the way that I felt, my skin, my body changed. It was ridiculous. And as soon as I got back from my traveling, I actually come off the pill and went on to the non-hormonal coil. Again, another really interesting experience. I went on that because I obviously don't want to get pregnant. And I remember going into the doctors, and I was with my mum, and so this was 2019, and there was a female nurse putting it in, and I made it very clear, like, I don't want a hormone in the contraception. And she questioned me why I didn't want a hormone. And I said, because I'm aware of how the hormones are impacting my body and I don't want one. Yeah, but your periods will be worse. Yeah, but I just don't want to put the hormone in my body. Are you sure that you don't want to do that? Are you sure? Because the cramps are going to be really bad. Are you sure? And I just noticed in that moment how pushy she was coming across and being for me to have this hormone, and how negative she was making all of these things about my period seem. And thank God that I was really, really in my truth. And I was like, no, I do not want a hormone put in my body again. And she was like, okay, like it may be something that you regret. So if you do, you can come back. And I was like, wow, this is like super disempowering. Like nobody asked for your input. Like I've done my research and I know that I don't want a hormone in my body. Thank you. But isn't it interesting the way periods are always so negative and so associated with the cramps and, you know, all of the things that we have to put up with. And you know what I've realised? It is hard when we do have the PMS, but you know why it's hard? Because we don't fucking slow down and honour our body. That's why it's hard. We don't connect to our periods. We don't connect to what our body is saying that she needs. We just plow through and we totally disrespect ourselves. So no wonder it's hard. Like no wonder we are exhausted. No wonder that we really struggle to understand what phases we're in and understand how our body and our needs and our energy changes when we are in these different phases. So I just always think like, no wonder there's such negativity associated to periods, because we don't honour them. So yeah, they are going to feel more negative, aren't they? So since I've been on the coil, the non-hormonal one, it's been fine. You know, I'm having a natural cycle now, which I'm noticing more. And it was actually getting the non-hormonal coil in that prompted me to start thinking about tracking my period. So I only actually started tracking about 2 years ago, and it has been a game changer. I just use an app on my iPhone, the health app it is, and it will give me little prompts and little notifications and be like, you're coming up to your bleed. It will tell me, you know, the window where I'm most likely to bleed. It will tell me how many days in between my cycle's been. And oh my God, it is incredible. And the reason being is because I'll explain it. So I got my first day of my bleed about 3 days ago. My PMS symptoms started last week. So please just appreciate that's like a week and a half of PMS symptoms. And as we know, not every period is the same. So some days some months I will have hardly no PMS symptoms. Some months I will have it a few days before and I'll notice when I'm coming on. And the longer I'm tracking my cycle, naturally I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm round about due on. So I'm beginning to notice that within my own body without needing the app to remind me or guide me. So it must have been last Wednesday or Thursday, I just woke up and I was exhausted to my core. And I was really agitated and I felt really down and I just felt like really shit. And I was also really, really hungry. And I was like, what is going on? Like, why do I feel this way? And then the day after is when I started to notice like this obscene anxiety, like horrendous as soon as I woke up. And I was like, what is going on? So I remembered my cycle app. So I went on it. And I was like, I must literally be due on in the next day or two. And it told me that I was due on in a week's time. And I was like, oh my God. And what it made me realise is how powerful it is to track our cycle. Because that meant that I understood for that week and a half before I actually had my bleed, the changes that my body was going through, and I could really honour my needs and I could really observe what was changing for me and have compassion. And that was the most important thing, because if I had just woken up on the Friday and the Saturday, and that way that I felt on the Saturday and the way that I felt on the Friday was horrendous, if I had just woken up feeling that depressed and thinking, why have I just woken up feeling this anxious and angry and introverted and just fucking miserable? Like, could you imagine the difference? Like, could you imagine how that would have been to just think that I was randomly waking up and feeling that way. So what it also allowed me to notice was that I knew this period was going to be a bad one, so I could prepare for it, because I knew if my PMS symptoms were this bad for that long, I just knew it was going to be a bad one. And granted, it absolutely has been. It's been one of the heaviest bleeds I've had in a long time, to the point where I am just like coming through everything. I am just literally on empty. And even doing this podcast, my thoughts don't feel as sharp. Like it doesn't feel as easy to like articulate myself and connect to the story that I'm trying to put across in the podcast episode. And that's fine, because I'm just honouring how I'm showing up today. But it's really, really took it out of me hugely. So now I'm really, really getting into a space where I'm understanding my cycle. And if anybody's watching this and they don't track their cycle, I recommend it so much, because one of the things I always used to think as well is, so after my period, a few days after, I didn't even know about ovulation. A few days after, I would get these really bizarre cramps, and it would scare me, because I'd think, I've just had my period, like why am I getting cramps? I literally should not be getting them. And what I now know from tracking my cycle is those cramps are a sign that I am in ovulation, and I never ever knew that. I never knew how there may be changes to my smell, there may be changes to my discharge, there may be changes to my energy. You know, often I feel like really, really good when I'm ovulating. So I never knew what any of these things were. So I just used to be like, what is going on? Maybe sometimes I'd be quite embarrassed. Maybe sometimes I'd be like, I don't understand, like, what is even going on down there? Why am I feeling this way? Why is this responding in this way? Why am I getting cramps? And then when you begin to track, you realise, oh, it's because I am ovulating, which again, you can meet your own needs, you can understand your body. It's self-awareness, and it's so important. It's so important. So honouring our needs is important for us, understanding our cycles, but also then we can communicate that to other people. So for me now on my period, I'm just like, I'm retreating inwards. I do not want to cook anything. I don't really want to do anything. I am quite introverted, and I'm okay with that. I am 100% needy, literally clinging off my boyfriends for cuddles, and then like I'm just like, look after me all the time. So I'm embracing that side of myself, but also like I'm communicating that to him and saying, I am really struggling with my period. I am really bleeding, actually really, really heavy, and this is where I'm at. So can you meet me where I'm at? And that's a game changer for any type of relationship. It's a game changer for you showing yourself that self-love and that self-respect, but also your partner or your friends or your children or whatever it is meeting you where you are at. And also there was things that I had planned last week, and I was just voice noting to people, and I was like, I just literally don't have the energy to do it. Like I literally cannot do it. Can we rearrange? I was meant to record a podcast with someone this morning. We got on the call. God love her. She was amazing. And she was like, are you okay? And I was like, I'm bleeding so heavy. And she was like, Lydia, this is not gonna be good, so let's just reschedule it. And she met me where I was at, and that was incredible. And the more we can do that as women, the more we will begin to empower women as a collective around periods, and empower ourselves and empower the generation coming below us. And that shame around periods and that disconnection around periods will slowly begin to change and shift, and that's the best thing we can do. So I just want to talk you through, because you may have seen me talk about on Instagram how I describe my cycles. So I don't describe them in a way where it's using the scientific terms. I don't do that. I do it in a way where I describe it as in a winter, in a spring, in a summer, and in a fall. And I heard about this from my friend Annie, and as soon as I heard it, it just felt incredible, because it's really a way of, for me, it feels so embodied. It feels so relatable when I'm thinking about seasons. So for me, that just felt like such an embodied way to think about periods, because it's just so nice, isn't it? And it just takes away like the way it's described, that doesn't really feel I don't know, for me, it just doesn't really feel when you hear like luteal phase and ovulation phase. I'm like, oh, okay, but like I want it to be like an embodied, I want to understand what that means in an embodied, like spiritual way. And this is just so beautiful, I think. So I'm reading through this because I wanted to find a really, really good source that I could follow and guide you to read up further on this. So I didn't just want to come on and go, this is in a winter, this is in a spring. So I'm going to tell you where I am getting this information from to expand on how I view it and expand on my knowledge of it. And the reason I'm using this website is because this is like a really, really reliable source. So I will link it in the show notes. It's called riseandwoman.com, and when I say reliable, they've got an Instagram account that I follow, and I learn a lot from these people. So when I'm saying from this account, so when I'm saying reliable source, this is something that as within my podcast, I feel comfortable to guide you to read, to learn more about, because I've learned a lot from it. So phase 1, week 1 is inner winter. So that is around day 1 to 6 of your menstrual cycle when you are bleeding. So right now I am in my inner winter, and every single month when you track, you notice that your days may shift. So some days I may bleed for 3 days, some days I may bleed for 6 days. It's different. So this season is winter. And what I love is this is why I love this way of thinking about the periods, because when you think of winter, what do you think about? What's the first thing that comes up? What does your body feel? You think of hibernation. I think of candles and being snuggly and dark nights and sitting in and comfort food. That is so perfect to describe how I feel and how my body feels and what I need when I am bleeding. So it's just like, I feel so excited talking about it and sharing this, because this changed so much for me, changed so much in terms of my cycle and connecting to my cycle. So I digress because I'm getting excited sharing this information. So winter, that's what I'm in right now. The archetype, if you know anything about archetypes, we are in the wise woman, we are in the visionary, and the bleeding phase is our moon time. So when we are in our winter, it's the first day we begin bleeding, and it's week 1 of your cycle. Winter is a time of inward reflection. So for me, what I always think about with my winter is it's a time when I really retreat. It's a time when I really come inward. It's a time when I notice I might be irritated. It's a time when I noticed I have stronger boundaries. I don't want to be around other people. I become quite introverted. I want a lot of rest. I want a lot of peace and quiet. I don't really want to do anything. I could just happily spend my days doing nothing, but filling them with things that I want to do, like being creative, or sitting on the sofa, or reading, or just literally doing nothing. Just like waking up and enjoying that process of waking up. So, Rise and Women says that hibernation and rest are 2 qualities that characterise what this phase is about for women. But there's also a spiritual element woven into it. According to ancient women's wisdom, the winter phase or wise woman phase is a time when the veil between worlds becomes thinner. A woman on her moon is said to be more powerful and have deeper access to her own wisdom. And I love that. So you may have also heard me say on Instagram, I'm heading towards my moon cycle, or I am heading towards my first day of what will I describe it as? No, I think that's how I say it. Like, I got my first day of my moon cycle. Yeah. And then this is what they are saying as well. We get really connected to our intuition if we allow ourselves to. It's a time when we want to feel safe. It's a time when we have a lot of creativity and a lot of wisdom. And I think we have a lot of creativity and wisdom because we allow the body to slow down. We stop. We just do, we sit, we sit with ourselves. And because there's a lot of energy, I think, within our womb, and a lot of energy within that, you know, around that part, like our root, our really, really root central chakra, because there's a lot of energy going on around that space. We are really, really sensitive to what's coming up for us. So that is the winter. Week 2 is inner spring, so around day 7 to 13, when you're in the pre-ovulation phase. Inner spring is such a beautiful time. So again, when you think about spring, what do you think of? You think about blue. I think about blooming and new flowers and those crispy cold days where you still want to be a little bit wrapped up, but the sun is shining and the birds are out and they're tweeting. That is what I think about with spring. So the archetype for this is the goddess or the maiden. And the spring phase, spring is about rebirth. It's about renew. It's about fresh starts, cleansed, energized, and happy. So when you think about those days, when you come away from when you think about those days after your period and after your bleed, and you notice that shift in your energy, and it's kind of like your flower blooming in spring. See, this is just it's so beautiful and it's so loving. It's such a loving way to look at your period, you know. And you think about a flower blooming. That is us after we've had our bleeding phase. We come back into the world, we have space for people, we are rested, so we are meant to be. You know, we can focus into projects, we can lean in a little bit more to doing things, we are more extroverted, people won't piss us off as much. So that is the spring. So the key words that Rise and Woman use for this are rebirth, renewal, fresh start, focused, independent, strong, able to take on challenges, and concentration. So as I've already said, my concentration right now is not the best, and I will notice the shift as I head into my spring next week. My concentration will be there a lot more. And that's why pushing through and trying to do all of the fucking things when you're in your bleeding phase, you're just literally butting up against yourself because your body is telling you this is not a good time for me. Like, I'm struggling in this moment to concentrate. So if you're waking up when you're bleeding with a million things to do, when your body is craving rest and for you to go introverted, and you have 15 million things on your to-do list and you're meeting up with every single person in your phone book, well, no wonder it's very difficult for you to feel connected to your body and yourself when you're on your period. So week 3 is inner summer. This is when you are feeling like, or for me anyway, this is when I am feeling like the tits. You know, you will know when I am on my summer, I will be glowing, I will be feeling, in my spring and summer, I will be glowing, I will be very sexually active, very sexually turned on, I will switch kind of into a masculine energy, I think, in my spring and my summer. Kind of like an alpha female energy, I think. Just observing and getting to know myself more in my cycles. I very much switch into that energy of this is what I want and I'm going out into the world and getting it. And, you know, that includes my man. Like, this is what I want and I'm coming to get you. So week 3 is inner summer, and that's around day 14 to 21 during your ovulation phase. So the archetype for this is the mother and the healer, and this is the ovulation. So remember when I was saying I used to notice that I was getting cramps? This is how I know I'm coming into my season of summer. So summer phase is when things begin to heat up, literally and metaphorically. This is the 3rd week of the menstrual cycle when ovulation occurs. So we may ovulate on the 14th day. Some will ovulate earlier or later. And keywords for this are outward and expressive, flirty, see, that's really interesting, creative, playful, relationship building, nurturing, love making, holding space for others. It's a time where we have a lot to give to other people. We want like delicious sex, but our fertility is also heightened at this time. So always remember that. So fall is 4th week. And it's when we start to wind down. So now you begin to see, if you think about the seasons in terms of the year, And you think about when we come into autumn. Autumn is in preparation, isn't it, for winter? You know, the nights start to get shorter, it's darker earlier, the leaves start to fall off the trees, it gets a little bit colder, and we are really, really in preparation for that time of winter where we go into hibernation. So you may notice yourself feeling more inwards at this time, and you may start to become agitated by the things that you have to do. You want more time alone. You notice that being around people, you just don't want to be around people as much anymore. You may start to get a little bit more fatigued, more irritable. And this is where, for me, I notice in my fall is where the PMS comes in. So this is when I notice I actually get fatigued, I get bloated, I get anxiety. And for anybody who doesn't know what PMS is the name for the symptoms women can experience in the weeks before her period. So PMS is what I would say is my fall. That's where it comes in. And then what I notice is as soon as I have my first day of bleed, those symptoms massively reduce. So all the fatigue is still there, but all of the other symptoms will massively reduce in terms of like the low mood, the anxiety, the bloating, all of that type of stuff. So fall is kind of the time when women will go, I think I'm due on my period, because you usually notice the cramps, the bloating, you know, change in your skin. Like, do you ever just have those days where you're just like, I just look like shit today, and your skin feels bad and your hair won't go right, and you try outfits on and you're just like, nothing is going right. Usually for me, in my experience, that's another sign that I'm in fall. My body is just like, and my hormones are everywhere. So choosing consciously to acknowledge this inward phase is a courageous act of self-love, which is what I actually said on my Instagram story. When a woman listens to her body during the fall or wild woman priestess phase, she may be full to the brim with inspiration and find herself more inclined to dedicate her waning energy towards pursuing creative ideas. This is a wonderful time to nurture one's own creative insight, write poetry, draw, come up with strategic ideas for your business or career, and assert yourself. So the key words and phases that Rising Woman uses is lower energy, our hormones are different, we need more space. Ask less of me, I don't want to give to you right now. We may be moody, less focused, less physically active, but we have heightened creativity and we have more mental creativity. We notice that we feel more creative. So instead of doing, we are just being and honouring that creativity that is coming through us. So after we obviously go from the fall into the winter, and then we are back into that cycle. So I really wanted to share this, and I really wanted to share it with a platform that I know will give you so much depth if you choose to go and read this. And actually this has been a game changer for me, an absolute game changer, thinking about my cycle in this way and understanding the different phases, and then also having that like visual image and lived experiences of what the different months mean. Because I don't know, I just feel like it gives me such a permission slip to just be and honour my cycle and my needs. And I also wanted to just get across in this episode that it's absolutely okay for you to honour your needs. Like it's really, really important for you to understand the shifts in your mood, what you actually want and what you actually need, and be in control of your life. Like, get to know yourself rather than feeling as though you are just going through the motions and you are giving when you don't have the energy to give, and you are doing things that you don't want to do. And even sometimes, like, if you're irritated by people, instead of feeling guilty about that, if you can connect that to your cycle, you just have more compassion with yourself. And you, like I said, you can go out and you can share that. And this is really a way to tap into your feminine energy. Like, this is so important for you to tap into that feminine side of yourself. Honour that femininity, honour your womb, honour what it is about, honour what it gives you, honour yourself. You know, it's honour being a woman. Like, it's a permission slip to honour ourselves collectively as women and the things that we go through. And then when you are in the space where you want to go out and bring the world your best, then go and do that in the spring and your summer. Like, make the most of the weeks that you have where you can show up as your best self, rather than trying and forcing things when you're in your winter or you're in your autumn and you're just making it impossible for yourself. Like, understanding your cycle actually makes life so much friggin' easier. So that is today's podcast episode, and like I said, I hope you enjoyed it. It was 40 minutes, so it's a little bit longer, and I am going to be bringing a guest in to talk about contraception and periods and all of these things, because I think it's really important. So this was just my lived experience and how I manage my cycles now, and how I track my cycles, and how I really honour my needs. So I hope you enjoyed it, and from my heart to your heart, I am sending you so much self-love. I hope that you honour yourself today. I hope that I have planted the seed of self-love for you to think about and take away. I see you, I love you, thank you so much for being here. Mwah.